Ooh. You didn't tell me you were a brainiac.
Welcome to LeatherBrainz, your host, Slapdog, and man, I am off to a rocky start already. I am joined today by Scotty Del Rey and Alan Casanova Castro. We have the full crew here today to talk some shop. We're talking football. We're going to be talking NFL news today, and not only that, but we are going to be talking about some questions following the NFL draft for a couple NFL teams. We're going to be talking about some questions as far as their outlook and what their future looks like, both in the near term and in the long term for some of these NFL teams. So let's just start with NFL news, gentlemen. Let's start with the biggest headlining news. Mr. President Trump.
Mr.
President Trump himself announced that the 2027 NFL draft will be held at the nation's capital, at the National Mall. I don't know if one of you guys wants to try and do a Trump impersonation for this quote. Nope. Okay, you both shook your heads. No, immediately.
Not going to happen.
Okay. Well, then I'll just read it because my Trump impersonation skills are terrible. But he said, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be something that nobody else will ever be able to duplicate. Oh. I don't know if President Trump knows this. The NFL draft happens every year.
It's a draft.
So I don't know what grandeur schemes and plans he has for this to be the best thing since sliced bread, but it's the NFL draft. So
I don't know.
Cool.
He's always speaks in hyperbole all the time anyway, so whatever. I think it'll be a cool backdrop. I thought the one that was like this draft in Green Bay was fun just for the sheer fact that every so often they would just show the stadium. But most of the time you're just looking at the stage or Mel Kiper's hair. Like you're really it's not like they're going to take us on a personal tour around the White House during the draft. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Wow. You guys are being negative about it. This is exactly what George Washington envisioned when he helped establish this nation. Someday we're going to have an NFL draft right here in the Capitol. It wasn't even the Capitol back in his day.
We're going to bring in all of our toughest warriors and line them up. We'll call them commanders.
And
they'll be here.
First we'll have a derogatory name,
capital,
which we will evolve from. This feels like the Nate Bargatze sketch on SNL, where he's like, this feels like they need to do one of these, but for George Washington, he's like, they'll have a tight end, not what you're thinking. This is going to be cool. I think it'll be neat.
Will be cool.
I will say, I do like that it's not always at Radio City Music Hall in New York. I like that they spread the love. They're going to different places. Fans get to travel. If you live in that area, it's kind of neat because otherwise you would never go to the draft. Like you would never just go to New York and hang out outside of Radio City Music Hall. Just
Scotty and I went to the draft at Kansas City a few years ago just because it was close, and we're like, hey, let's go. When are we gonna have the next opportunity? Like we're not gonna travel to Green Bay. We're not gonna travel to the nation's capital for the draft, but because it's close, let's go check it out. Let's be there for it. So
it was really where this is going though. They're gonna have a draft overseas.
Oh, for sure. Give it 10 years.
Where that's exactly where this is going. He's just lathering everybody up. Goodell's getting everybody used to this, and then when they run out of a few hot spots, they're gonna be like, and we're in Germany.
L'Chaim. I did see, I don't know if you guys have seen this, the Commanders Stadium concepts. This isn't real, but it would be so cool if the Commanders built a new stadium in DC and they made it the same architectural visuals as our nation's capital type, like the big pillars and all that kind of stuff. That would be such
marble.
A cool, marble. That would be awesome.
That would be super dope. I heard it's all very just off-colored joke somebody made about this dome or this stadium that they're going to make. They're like, if it's a dome, it'll go by one name, and then when the dome's off, it goes by JFK Stadium. And
oh my God!
I was just absolutely dying. I was like, that's A+ creativity.
That is. Well, while we're talking about things that are kind of risque, let's talk about Justin Tucker. John Harbaugh said this in response to questions surrounding Justin Tucker's future. He said, every decision we make has to be based on football. And then a couple hours later, they cut Justin Tucker.
Tough.
Is it tough?
Honestly, it probably was almost entirely based on football, because even without the allegations, Justin Tucker clearly let all this stuff get to his head, and he has been pretty freaking bad. So they don't have to worry about letting everything play out. They're like, listen, if all this is going on and you can't handle it and play football, we got no use for you.
Yeah, being a kicker is like being a golfer. As soon as the mental stuff's off and you're shanking a few, you shank them all, or you just can't do it. And he definitely showed signs of that. Something was bothering him over the last few seasons because you couldn't rely on him. It was basically like when you trotted him out on the field, you were like 99% chance he makes this. And then this last 2 years, it was like not as much, 70% question.
Tucker was one of the best kickers of all time. I mean, he was an 8-time Pro Bowler, or a 7-time Pro Bowler, an 8-time All-Pro, NFL's 2010 All-Decade Team. He currently holds the record for the longest field goal in NFL history at 66 yards. His career totals for field goals is 417 out of 468, and he has the highest career field goal percentage in NFL history, 89.1%.
You got to be careful talking him up like this, because the Cleveland Browns are just going to come snatch this guy out of free
He'd fit the mold. I mean, they'll take anybody. They've shown that the last few years. Kareem Hunt, Deshaun Watson. Let's just keep adding to the repertoire here.
Yeah. Well, we forgive Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. The Chiefs forgive Kareem Hunt.
He's come back around.
Yeah. I don't know if his girlfriend or wife or whoever that was feels the same. But needless to say, I mean, the writing was on the wall, right? We saw, the Ravens had drafted a kicker in this last draft here. So we all knew that Tucker's days were limited.
I think in the NFL, this is a good topic, just good point of emphasis, is like it can change really quickly, because a couple years ago it was like Justin Tucker's a mainstay, he's a weapon, we can score with him, he changes the game, we feel comfortable about getting in field goal range. And now that's, you go into this next season, now it's a question mark. Now you don't know. Now it's something you pay attention to. So I think as a fan, it's definitely, and as a coaching staff, you wonder how you call a game. Do you go for it on fourth as much or more now because you're unsure, or how do you layer this into your game plan? So while it is a kicker and we poo-poo kickers and it's just kind of they do decide a lot of games and create a lot of sneaky points here and there to make things easier for their offense. So it'll be interesting to see how they operate now. This team's just growing and evolving. It's crazy how like a few years you just see teams just completely change, or big pieces of them change.
Well, talking about teams changing, Amari Cooper is still a free agent, gentlemen. And, as far as, look, I'm not saying Amari Cooper is a world beater and he's going to be able to change a franchise, but he's an older wide receiver. He's a vet. He still, presumptually has a little bit of gas left in the tank. We saw him with the Browns, and then obviously he got traded to the Bills. Didn't really do anything when he was with the Bills. I think, a lot of people were expecting kind of a lightning in a bottle situation where he ends up with the Bills and all of a sudden he is the dominant wide receiver one. That never came to fruition. He's still a free agent. There's certainly some teams that still need a wide receiver, and I do think Amari Cooper could lend some assistance to a wide receiver room. A team that I've seen a lot of chatter about that Amari Cooper could make a hometown reunion of sorts with is the Cowboys. You think that does that stick? If we throw the mud on the wall, does that stick there for Amari Cooper? Is there any other teams that come to mind that Amari Cooper could lend a helping hand to, or is Amari Cooper, is he just a fade at this point?
I don't know. I think he could still be useful as long as you go in with the right expectations. And I think, after this last season, getting moved around a little bit, Amari Cooper has the right mindset. But, when we saw him with the Bills, a big part of the reason why he didn't make more of a splash is because the Bills changed their focus. It wasn't Josh Allen hero ball. It was, let's get James Cook the ball and let's have a steady and balanced offense. So, once they got rid of Stephon Diggs, it was clear they weren't interested in having this like superstar wideout that controls the team with Josh Allen. They wanted something more balanced. So I don't think that necessarily is any sort of blight on his resume. I think a team like the Cowboys would be perfect. Go there, be a wide receiver 2, be a wide receiver 3, be a veteran in the locker room and make an impact. And I think he can do that for a few more years.
Yeah, location will be interesting where he goes. I think a lot of it will come into picture when teams go through, OTAs and they start getting into camp and you start navigating injuries or people maybe not coming back as quickly as they thought. And you'll hear chatter to bring him in. Especially maybe more contenders that maybe need a little bit of depth at that position would be interesting. It would be ironic for the Cowboys to get him back because I think that's largely where all of this roster mismanagement came into play, was when they let Cooper go and sign Zeke to that big deal, and that all kind of put them in the spot.
Let's bring all of our old friends back into the building.
Yeah, I get the familiarity. This is interesting because teams do this all the time. There's like a hot name out there, and you're like, oh, that'd be perfect on our team. And coaches, organizations will always gravitate towards the thing that's like, oh, they're familiar, and it works sometimes. You see it work with some teams. I do agree with him on the Bills. I think he does have more left in the tank. Just we saw Diggs kind of have that similar fate with the Bills where he kind of got phased out towards the end of the season before when they did start running the ball more. I almost wonder, because this is kind of what the Hopkins with the Chiefs was. It was kind of like, oh yeah, I forget he was on that team. And so I don't know. I don't know if he has enough miles on him left.
Well, and the wide receiver room for the Cowboys is nothing to get excited about. I mean, you have CeeDee Lamb, of course, and then you have Jalen Tolbert, Jonathan Mingo, Cavante Turpin.
And I don't think Amari Cooper gets that room any more sexy, maybe by name.
Potentially. But, I mean, they're hurting for wide receivers, and they did nothing in the draft to try and get another wide receiver to assist CeeDee Lamb. So all signs kind of indicate that it could be an Amari Cooper reunion here.
Yeah. And I think based on the Cowboys' moves, I mean, they bolstered the offensive line. They want to protect Dak given his injury history. Adding a veteran wide receiver makes a lot of sense for that team.
Yeah. Scotty, interested to pick your brain here. So Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, he expects tight end Kyle Pitts to, quote, take a big jump in second year in Robinson's scheme. Kyle Pitts or bust?
Yeah, all I have to say is I'm glad Kyle Pitts is finally getting some of the recognition, so people finally have faith in this guy. I don't know. Obviously, Kyle Pitts, no matter what. I've said that for years, and because I say no matter what, I got to stick with it. But I am skeptical. I don't know. I want to believe in the Falcons so bad.
I
know.
I do. I really want to. But
this team on Madden makes you're like, oh, this could be amazing. But then they actually go play real football, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Do you think,
why is it not working?
Do you think it's the offensive coordinator Zach Robinson? Do you think it's partially his fault? Because we know they have weapons. We know what Drake London is. I don't want to say we know what Kyle Pitts is, because the more that I've seen Kyle Pitts, the less I know of Kyle Pitts. But we've seen him have success, his rookie season, and then it kind of fell off from there. But they have weapons. They have Bijan. Darnell Mooney is not a world breaker, but he's not a bad wide receiver. And now you have Michael Penix in the mix. And so also say, do you think Robinson maybe carries some of the blame there as far as why that offensive production is not nearly as stout as we had hoped it would be?
No.
Maybe. I still think they're just struggling to find continuity at the quarterback position. And maybe Penix does that this season. Obviously, he didn't get much of a chance to get his feet wet last year after they made the sudden switch from Kirk Cousins. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is this is a roster that is laden with talent, and they've just been completely suppressed by a lack of consistency at the field general position. They haven't been able to find it. And bringing Kirk Cousins on, myself and a lot of people thought, okay, it's not like Kirk Cousins is Lamar Jackson, but he is a competent quarterback, and they've got a lot of weapons, and it was just kind of okay. I mean, they were competing in that division, but that's not saying much. And when they made the switch, it was still just kind of okay, and I don't know. I have no idea.
I always struggle with this when coordinators come out and say this, because some of it's like you should adjust your scheme to what you have on the field, and if you realize you're deficient at an important part of your team, like the quarterback position, then try to get these other players more involved. Give Bijan the ball more. Look for Pitts quicker than letting a route tree develop for a few seconds and then hoping everything falls on time. I think what's interesting is in football, rather than other sports like basketball or baseball or wherever, it's totally controlled by the play that it's called. And if the continuity isn't there, if the right play isn't called, if things aren't working in motion, if you're not getting the right players in there to help support that scheme, or you're adjusting to the scheme or adjusting to the players, it all looks bad. And I hope the Falcons take a step forward, but you never know. It just, you've seen talented rosters up and down the NFL for years where they just can't put it together. They have the pieces there, that just doesn't work. And I think this is one of those times that I hope they put it together, but who knows? I don't know what they're doing Monday through Friday.
They're in the NFC South, and that encompasses the Saints, the Panthers, the Bucks, and the Falcons. Okay, way too early preseason guesstimation here. Where do you have the Falcons in this division?
I'd still put them in the top two.
Yeah.
The Panthers are interesting with Bryce Young. Obviously, they got some other weapons. We're going to talk about them a little bit more later. Bryce Young still has just some to prove to me. I mentioned it in a past episode. I know you didn't ask about the Panthers, but now
we're talking about the NFC South. So let's talk about it.
One thing that really worries me, it's just nagging in the back of my head with Bryce Young, is when the expectations were high, he sucked. When the expectations were low, he was great. The expectations are getting back to being high again, and I'm concerned that there's a mental issue with Bryce Young. We haven't seen him enough, and obviously it's the Panthers. They haven't had a ton of weapons. They've gotten better, but it's still no one's expecting them to be top of the league anytime soon. So I'm just a little bit concerned with the Panthers. They're sort of a prove-it-to-me team. I think they can do it, and I think Bryce Young can be a great quarterback, but I still just have to see it. And the Bucs are just frisky, and they haven't made a lot of roster changes, and there's no real reason to think that they're going to be a lot worse than they were last year when they were competing with the Falcons. So I still put the Bucs and the Falcons kind of at the top in terms of potential, but that division is just such a crapshoot.
I think for me, the Bucs are clear one, just because they know what they're doing. They have an identity. Baker's more than capable enough of putting that team in putting points together. We saw what he did when he didn't have all the wide receivers available to him, and so I think you're confident there. Then after that, it's kind of a crapshoot on who's. I think the only thing
give me the rank. You have Bucs at number one.
I would put Bucs right now. I'd put Bucs, Panthers, Falcons, Saints at the bottom.
Okay,
just that because
that's also where my mind is at is as far as my ranking is concerned. And I think Scotty, you mentioned the Panthers are scary. Totally understand where you're at, but I almost do have higher expectations for them, seeing how they played the second half of last season, where they've kind of reinvigorated the notion that Bryce Young maybe actually can get things done there. And they got him some, they got Tet as a wide receiver, of course, and that was where they were really hurting for that. They've brought in some running backs to compete for that, a timeshare of sorts there. I also have the Bucs or the Panthers at number 2, right behind the Bucs, and then I have the Falcons at 3, and the Saints, obviously, I don't think are going to be doing anything for the foreseeable future, unfortunately for them.
Tough look.
It is tough luck, but you know what? It is what it is. Kyren Williams, running back for the Rams, says, I don't think, this is a quote from Williams, he said, I don't think I've touched my peak yet.
It's not where I thought that was going. I also have not touched my peak. Yes.
Oh, I want to touch your peak.
I don't think any man would want to admit or say out loud that they have or have not hit their peak yet, especially in a profession where you're judged based on where you are on your peak. You definitely would never come out and be like, past my prime. Good luck, everybody. You're just basically shot yourself dead with any contract negotiations because you've admitted it. So,
do you think he's reached his peak, Alan?
I don't know. I would doubt it. I don't think so, but I don't think he's gonna turn into Barry Sanders either. I think production wise, maybe not, but I think skills and talent, you kind of know what you're getting. So I don't know what that means.
It's difficult to see him having more success, especially given the changes on the team. Matthew Stafford's not getting any younger. They lost Cooper Kupp. Obviously, this is a team. We don't really have any reason to believe, especially with Cooper Kupp missing so much time last year, and Puka Nacua. When he was healthy, he was perfectly capable of carrying that offense with Kyren Williams. But it seems like with a healthy Matthew Stafford, a healthy Cooper Kupp, a healthy Puka Nacua, that's the best situation that Kyren's going to find himself in the near future. So taking that into account, I don't know if we should expect 1,000 yards from him every year for his entire career.
True. Well, he could physically be not at his peak yet, maybe, and he would still be less productive.
And let's not forget Sean McVay over these last few years. I'm afraid of the running backs in that room with Sean McVay, because he traditionally has ran a one running back room system, and then he kind of sort of got away from that. Kyren's draft capital certainly makes me scared, and that's not to say that he's not a great running back and he hasn't done really well, but Sean McVay's also shown that he's willing to throw his best guy in there regardless of where he was drafted at or the situation at hand, and Kyren does have some fumbling issues. So also say, I'm not saying he's going to go anywhere. I do think he is very obviously the running back one for the Rams, but they've got Corum behind him. They drafted another running back this year, and so things could get interesting there. And like you mentioned, Scotty, Coop's not on the roster anymore, and they went and got Devontae Adams, which I think, to be quite honest, is probably an upgrade from Cooper as of late. So interested to see how that pans out.
Yeah,
but
I
while we're
forgot
talking about
that.
yeah,
I forgot about that.
We're talking about the Rams. You mentioned Matt Stafford's not getting any younger, Scotty. Sean McVay, he hopes that Matthew Stafford will play, quote, a couple more years. And this is right after Stafford got a contract inked or a kind of an upgraded contract for some extra cheddar. But it is worth noting Matt Stafford's going to be 38 this year. So if Sean McVay is hoping he's going to play for a couple more years, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean that's got to be completely health dependent for him. I think he's capable of doing it. He's super talented, and I didn't look like he lost any of his arm strength, which is kind of like the telltale sign of like we're wrapping this thing up. Like when Drew Brees lost his arm strength, and you could see like, oh, he's not even getting up. It's pretty obvious, but I don't think you see that from Matt. So I think as long as he keeps himself healthy and they keep him upright, I don't see why not. But I mean, going back to the Kyron thing, like I was going to mention Stafford, and this is kind of where it comes to a head is like that this offense is going to flow through Stafford. He's going to throw it 30, 35 times a game, especially with Devontae, especially with all the weapons. They drafted Ferguson out of Oregon at tight end, which gives them another weapon to play with. And I think that's where this offense is. So your running back situation, I think, is going to be more split, and it's going to get watered down with, they're obviously going to want to push that ball down the field, especially in that division and where they play. So I think he does play a few years. I don't see why not. Obviously, the elephant in the room is, can he just stay healthy?
Yeah. Deontay Johnson, he signs a 1-year deal with the Browns.
Sick.
Not surprised.
Awesome.
I am slightly surprised. Deontay Johnson has had quite the career arc over the last really year, right? And you saw him get traded from the Steelers. He went to the Panthers. He got cut. He went to, the Ravens. Didn't do anything there. Got cut. Like he's been all over the place. For him to land with the Browns is probably the most Browns move I've ever seen. But very clearly, this guy is a locker room issue. And I don't really think Deontay Johnson does anything to bolster that wide receiver room. Why bring him in?
Yeah.
Why?
A warm body, I guess. Yeah.
But you know he obviously has problems. Like he's showcased that with the 4 teams he was on last year and how they all cut him and like.
Yeah, it's either
why?
problems in the locker room or does he even want to play or where's his commitment to his craft, and that could rub people the wrong way too, which you never know. Interesting, and that doesn't give you any stability at the position. You just kind of sign somebody just to have somebody there. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like gone after camp though.
I think that I hope that's the case. For all 10 Browns fans out there in the world, you probably don't want this guy in your roster. Last thing here on the NFL news. Did you guys see this whole thing with John Elway?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this. I need someone to give me the skinny.
Yes. I can read it. You kind of know theoretically what happened, correct?
They were drinking, they were golfing, and it was I think he took too sharp of a turn. His buddy fell out of the cart and didn't get back up.
Yeah,
which I've done before. I've fallen out of a golf cart, and it's not a fun time. It hurts. Yeah.
I mean, if you're drinking, I would classify this one as preventable.
Yeah, I would say so.
But, I wonder what they were like, what was happening? Not to make light of the situation, but it's kind of like, what were they doing? Was he just like erratically driving? Was the guy drunk and jumped out while they were driving and he smacked his head? And the sheriff classified it as an accident, like through and through. So it wasn't like John Elway was.
John Elway's a murderer.
It'd be pretty hard to intentionally kill someone with a golf cart. That's sort of like when people die by train. It's like, what were you doing? You have to make 18 mistakes in a row to get hit by a train.
Unless you intentionally want to get hit by a train.
I did see this piece of information. Do you watch like reality TV at all? Like MTV at all? Like what the hell is that show? The Challenge.
Ridiculousness?
No, you ever watch that? The Challenge though?
I have seen clips, maybe an episode here or there, but.
Okay, so what happened? One of the guys came out. His reality star name is Johnny Bananas, but apparently he was also golfing with them. And his quote was, "We were standing on the back of the cart as Elway drove, and his wife sat in the front seat." So they were standing on the back of it. You hit a bump. If you're riding on the back of a golf cart, you can go flying pretty quickly. So I'm guessing that's what happened. And the guy was in his 60s and get a little knock on the noggin there.
Well,
Be
I
Why
lights
did
out
Johnny
the
Bananas
story-
bear hug him on the way down and just be like, protect the
I don't know.
president kind of thing?
sacrifice himself?
Yeah.
Someone needs to send this story to my brother because every single time he gets drunk and we're golfing together, he will jump out of another cart and chase me down and rip me out of whatever cart I'm in. That's like his thing that he's been doing since I was 11. And now I know it's very dangerous.
It is.
Well,
rather
yeah, you
dangerous.
can.
Ironically
That-
enough, the time that I did fall out of a golf cart, I was golfing with your brother. He didn't yank me out of it. But seems like there's a common theme here.
Hilarious.
All right, let's pivot over to the questions with these NFL teams following the NFL, like post NFL draft. We're going to bring up a couple NFL teams here and kind of discuss their future outlook. So CBS, this had all kind of come from CBS. They published an article titled "Biggest Questions Facing Each NFL Team After the Draft." So we kind of picked some interesting ones here. We'll start with my team, the Cardinals. Is Kyler Murray capable of a big leap?
Like physically jumping far?
I was going to say
or-
physically, probably not, because he's pretty tiny. He's a small guy.
Imagine he makes like the Mario sound when he jumps. In my head, that's what he does. I don't know if he does that for real. I don't know what more you're going to get out of Kyler Murray, and that might be a depressing thing to hear as a Cardinals
No,
fan.
I
It's
want
like-
your guys' opinions here because
I think you kind of
mine.
know. I think you kind of know what you're going to get. He's hot and cold. He'll have runs of games where he's like really on, and then he'll have some where you're like, what the hell was he doing? And I think that's just what you're going to have to live with. He makes some good plays. He makes some dumb plays. I don't think he's consistent enough to win you anything. I think would be my problem with Kyler Murray is like his consistency to deliver is not very high.
I think I'm lagging out here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. My take on Kyler Murray is very simple. I think he's one of those players that needs the perfect situation in order to thrive. I think the offensive coordinator has to scheme up something perfect. I think he needs good blocking, and he needs to be in a good headspace. And that's the biggest criticism that anyone can level against Kyler Murray is just the fact that he doesn't ever seem to be he's not like a stoic leader. He seems like he's got kind of an attitude problem. When things aren't going his way, he seems to collapse. And the physical skills are off the charts, of course, and he is a very difficult quarterback to deal with when things are going well. But being, in the situation that the franchise is in, and they're having these sort of downtime, and it's just difficult for me to imagine Kyler Murray being the one to elevate the team to the next level.
I agree with both those things. In large part, honestly, Kyler Murray from a quarterback perspective, I would put him kind of middle of the pack as far as my ranking is concerned, because I think he can win you games and he can also lose you games. And I think for me, I'm almost done with him, and I kind of want to move on from him and just, re-roll the dice with another quarterback, because I don't think he will be able to take you all the way. I'm optimistic we'll be better than the Seahawks this year. The 49ers, we'll see what happens. I think it's a tough conference. I mean, it really is. The Rams and the 49ers are both really great. But the Cardinals did some things this offseason that really do excite me from a defensive perspective. We really went defense heavy on the draft. We added some players in free agency. John Gannon is a defensive-minded head coach, so I'm excited to see what they do there. But they didn't really do anything from the offensive side of the ball to kind of give somebody else to that system. Obviously, we got Trey McBride. He's a great tight end. You got Marvin Harrison. So you're really going to be leaning on those guys as well as James Conner. I don't know if Kyler Murray is capable of a big leap, and I think a lot of that is also baked into, I think our offensive coordinator, Petzig, is a moron. I think that he needs to go because I think for offensively, our prior head coach, whose name for some reason is escaping me, he's the Commanders' offensive coordinator right now, Kingsbury. Yeah, Kingsbury really did. I don't think he was ready to be a head coach. I think, it kind of got to be a little too much for him. But I think from an offensive perspective, he did a really great job of unlocking what Kyler Murray is capable of. And that's where I think Drew Petzig does not. And so I think our offensive coordinator is also a hindrance, as well as kind of the intangibles that Scotty had mentioned from an attitude problem. So is Kyler Murray capable of a big leap? Physically, no. From the standpoint of can he get us to the playoffs? I'm crossing my fingers, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, you bring up a good point though with Kyler, because obviously we're fixated on Kyler, but the weapons you mentioned are some of kind of unproven from a consistent standpoint as well. Like, what can he rely on them to do day in, day out as well? So while a lot
Marv got bigger,
yeah,
he's yoked now.
I'm working out.
Yeah, he put on like 20 pounds. I mean, it's all off season like chatter, but the dude's like, I saw a picture of him the other day.
Don't lose that speed.
He was like damn. Like he took some
impression.
notes from his dad and
Can you
how
do
to
that
get
impression
big.
one more time? Yeah, that's
Thank
good.
Yeah, here. He's yoked. Let's move over to the Bills. Do the Bills have enough non-Josh Allen playmakers? You've got James Cook, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid. Is that sufficient enough for the Bills to continue to find success?
Yes.
I'll start with
the
you,
answer
Scotty.
is yes. I am a huge Josh Allen fan.
Okay.
I think the question's a little, I don't know, silly. Non-Josh Allen playmakers.
I agree.
When you got Josh Allen, it really feels like the Bills are always going to be in the mix. And they've added young talent where they needed to. They've made changes to their game plan where they needed to, and they've been competitive for like as long as I can remember. So as far as I'm concerned, when Josh Allen's still there, not only is his playmaking ability off the charts, but the polar opposite of Kyler Murray, even, that he is just a guy that you feel like is going to elevate the locker room. No matter who's around him, he's going to get the best out of him. He's always in a good mood. He's competitive, and I just am a huge fan of him, and I really think Bills fans are going to be happy with Josh Allen for the rest of his career, and they're going to be competitive until the end of time.
Yep, I agree.
You must have not seen the Bills with Tyrod Taylor because they were.
But Josh Allen.
But Josh Allen.
The Josh Allen Bills, yes, the Josh Allen Bills need defense, not offense. I think they scored more than enough points last year to be successful. They need that defense, especially if they're working the ground game as much as they are. You need a defense that can shut things down and then they can just salt the game away on the ground. That should be the recipe of success, and then just let Josh Allen do whatever he wants.
And we kind of saw that last year, did we not? They had really kind of leaned on their defense as well as the run game to kind of control the game a little bit more versus having to play hero ball with Josh Allen and, wide receiver of choice for the game. I think this is a really silly question. Yes, they do have enough non-Josh Allen playmakers, and also you have Josh Allen, who is I would argue one of the best playmakers in the game right now. So you don't really need to go sign a flashy wide receiver one. You don't need a Derrick Henry, and James Cook is good. Is he the best running back in the NFL? Absolutely not. But he's usable in that offense, and he's capable of getting it done, right? And then obviously Keon Coleman, Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, like the surrounding cast is
I like
not,
Shakir.
Yeah, they're not terrible. They're not world breakers, but they're not terrible. And so
I think in today's NFL, I think we overhype, who do you have? Like, you don't have the right start. Just the way the game's played now, the defense isn't knocking people out over the middle anymore. You can have shifty small guys at wide receiver and not worry about them getting killed anymore. Like, you don't need, Terrell Owens out there every time to be a successful offense. And I think the Bills are just fine. They just need to figure out how to get a few more stops and get Josh Allen the ball a few more times. That's really all it is.
Which they did. I mean, in this draft, they addressed a lot of defensive positions. So I expect them to still be upper echelon, top tier Bills as of the last few years, and I expect that roller coaster to continue to climb. So next team here is the Panthers. Is Bryce Young's receiving core really that much better? Short answer is yes. Yeah, I
mean, on paper, sure.
Yeah, on paper, absolutely. And obviously, they drafted Tet in the first round here. They went wide receiver, and then they have Xavier Legette, of course. And Adam Thielen's coming back, and Adam Thielen is not a young sprout, but he is a vet who has found success with the Panthers because of the lack of their wide receiver room. I expect Tet to be a huge upgrade for them. We kind of touched on the Panthers just a little bit earlier in the episode, but I do expect the Panthers to be better. I expect them to continue to take those steps forward because we saw in the second half of last season they'd kind of found a rhythm, they'd found a groove, and I want to see that again this year, and I fully expect to see. Look, I'm not saying the Panthers are playoff bound. I'm not saying the Panthers are going to start competing at a high level, but I want to see progress, and really where I want to see the progress is I want to see Bryce Young continue to take those next steps forward. And Scotty, you'd mentioned Bryce Young and some of the mentals that he was struggling with. They benched him. We saw the Red Rocket come out. He played for a little bit. They benched Andy Dalton again. Bryce Young came out, and he looked like a different quarterback. He looked like, he was having fun. He was enjoying the game of football, and I think that's a component of it that Doesn't mean a lot from a statistical standpoint. Maybe not, but it certainly helped him in his game, I believe, because it did show up on paper that he was a different quarterback and he was playing at a much better level. So, yeah, I do think, are the Panthers, they're still pieces away. They're still quite a few pieces away, but I think the foundational building blocks are headed in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yep.
It all comes down to Bryce Young. If he can continue the success that we saw at the end of last season, then there's no reason to think that this team won't be, your exact words were competing at a high level. They very well might be competing at a high level. It's just going to come down to Bryce Young. And like I said before, he's still just in this position where he's got to kind of prove it to me, because I'm concerned about what's going on between the ears a little bit once the pressure starts to mount. But we'll see. I certainly am rooting for him. I like Bryce Young. I like his humility, and I think if he is a really good quarterback in the NFL, it'd be really fun. Yeah. He'd be a good guy to root for. So I'm hoping for him.
Yeah, if you're to graph what are you most confident in from each team in that division, it's I'm most confident in the Bucs being good. I'm confident in the Saints being bad. I'm confident in the Falcons kind of being bad. But with the Panthers, it's it wouldn't shock me if they won the division, and it wouldn't shock me if they shit the bed. They literally could go either way, which is going to be interesting to follow this year.
It will be, and I'm the Panthers are a team that I've never really got excited about. I don't think ever in the history of the NFL, but this year I am interested to see what happens, because there's a little bit spark of optimism for that. So I'm interested to see how things progress with that team. Let's pivot over to the Jags. The Jags are, gosh, I feel like in a perpetual rebuild. All the time, no matter what's going on, the Jags are just always trying to figure out how to progress and how to actually find success. And obviously they had a deep playoff run 2 years ago, and then nothing after that. So they have a new head coach in Liam Cohen, and then they drafted Travis Hunter, as well as their new general manager, whose name escapes me. He's one of the youngest general managers in NFL history, if not the youngest, at 30 or 31. So all these changes, is it going to be enough to stabilize Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars this season in your minds, Alan?
Trevor Lawrence, man, if freshman year college, slam dunk, going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. And then from that point in time, I think everybody looks at that season he had as a freshman and are still longing for that development. I just don't see it. I think the book's written. I think he kind of is what he is. He can give you some solid plays, but he's not going to, I don't think he's capable of putting the team on his back. I think we've seen enough where, he is heavily reliant on some of these pieces. And so I think, going to your point, with what they did with Travis Hunter and bringing in some playmakers, I think that's what you got to do. I think if he's not going to go make the plays for you, got to find ways to allow him to get the ball there. And he can get the ball there. I just don't think he's going to do it. He's definitely not going to Josh Allen his way through a season and just hey, I'm going to score a million touchdowns if you want that. It's very much predicated on what he can get done out there. And it's crazy because his stock is slowly kind of going down. And I really think this year's a make it or break it year, I think, for him in the organization. I think if he doesn't take a step forward, if he doesn't show some promise with these playmakers and statistically show an upward trend, I think they're going to have some serious talks about, all right, what do we do with him? Where do we start going? What do we want to do? Because he needs to show something more than just, hey, I can throw a touchdown every now and again. It needs to be very consistent.
Do you think that Mr. Duval, Liam Cohen, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. Do you think that might buy Trevor Lawrence some grace in the event that he comes out and does not look great, because obviously there's been a new coaching regime coming in? Does that buy him some time and some grace with the NFL community in that way, or do you think that largely doesn't matter and he needs to prove
a smidge? I would say a little bit of time. And if Cohen is as good as everybody thinks he is, hopefully he puts him in positions to be good. And then I think you'll have your answer pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. The big difference between college Trevor Lawrence and NFL Trevor Lawrence is confidence. You don't see him having confidence when he's on the field ever. And part of that, of course, is the organization that's been in this perpetual rebuild and trying to figure it out. But at the end of the day, to answer that last question, I almost think Trevor Lawrence is in a spot where the expectations for him coming into the league were so high that it's nothing else really matters. If he's not performing at that high level, people aren't going to consider him to be a top-tier quarterback. I think he's got the physical attributes, but at the end of the day, he's been in the league a while, and we still haven't seen any sort of consistency from him, or like you said, any Josh Allen mentality where he can put the team on his back and go get the win. We haven't seen that yet, and if he comes out and struggles, even with a new head coach, it's still going to be, the conversation's going to be, Trevor Lawrence just isn't what we thought he was going to be coming into the NFL.
And I brought up the head coaches. I mean, this is his third head coach in not a long time. He had Urban Meyer, Doug Peterson, and now Liam Cohen. So that also sucks because you don't get to build continuity with your front office, or not your front office, but your coaching staff, and be able to kind of build trust and relationship, because it's been a revolving door. And so, look, I'm not a Trevor Lawrence fan. I don't believe he is. When he was playing at Clemson, yeah, he was absolutely electric, dominant, incredible. And since he's been in the NFL, I haven't seen any of it. And so, not a Trevor Lawrence fan, but I do kind of feel for the kid, because he has had a lot of turnover in the head coaching position that is certainly detrimental to his
every time
his success and building him up and all that kind of stuff. So,
I think the unfortunate part for Jags fans is, like, with Lawrence, this is when you should be hitting your stride as an organization with your quarterback, not still wondering and figuring it out. So that kind of sucks, because now you're like, whatever it is, we're still not confident in anything.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this. Are you confident in Trevor Lawrence and the Jags going into the season?
No. And part of the thing, I appreciate what you said about the revolving door with the head coaching, because that obviously makes a huge difference when it comes to quarterbacks, but it's not just a one-way street. Part of the reason coaches are getting fired is because they're not having success on the field, and at least part of that is Trevor Lawrence's fault. So it's sort of a chicken or an egg conversation. Is Trevor Lawrence the problem? Is the coaching staff? But because everyone had such high expectations of Trevor Lawrence, and then you also had some doofuses come through that were easy scapegoats as coaches, then this is the situation you end up in. But again, if he fails to perform under another head coach, you're going to run out of excuses. It's going to be, okay, this is clearly a Trevor Lawrence problem. So I agree with Alan that this is sort of a make or break it kind of season. It's going to depend on what it looks like, but if he looks incompetent.
Yeah. Unfortunately for them, the Colts are trying to get better. They're in a good spot with a lot of how their roster is. This is still the Texans division. So it's got to be statistically based, because I think results are going to be mixed. It's, may not translate itself to wins right away, but it's like, you just got to see, like, they're scoring points and losing. That's a whole hell of a lot of a different question than if they're not scoring any points and losing.
Sure. All right, let's talk about the scumbag, Sean Payton. The Broncos. Is Sean Payton working to establish a defense-first identity despite how Bo Nix played last year? I mean, Bo looked good. The offense currently is headlined by Cortland Sutton and Evan Ingram, which, in my opinion, is not upper echelon talent per se. I thought Bo Nix looked good last year. I thought for a rookie, he came out, he balled, he looked really well. I was expecting the Broncos to really do a lot to bolster the offense, and instead, in true Sean Payton scumbag fashion, he really bolsters the defense here. So, is there concerns for Bo Nix going into this year? And Alan, I'm going to start with Scotty here, because I think I know where you're going to go with this. So we'll start with you, Scotty.
I don't know. I think Bo Nix looked good enough that you can have confidence that the offense is going to function, at least to some degree. It's never a bad thing for a quarterback to have a great defense, because if your offense is going to underperform, you'd rather underperform against an opponent who also can't score. So that's not a bad thing. And the Broncos defense is legit. I mean, this defense on paper is going to be one of the best in the NFL. So if you're a rookie quarterback or you're a second-year quarterback and you're still trying to figure it out, having a great defense to lean on is something that is super valuable. But of course, unless Evan Ingram taps into that 6-game stretch where he was the best tight end in football for a short while, you just can't expect this offense to do a lot. And it's interesting to me that so much of the conversation around the Broncos deals with Bo Nix, and people are excited about Bo Nix and look what he did. Look at how competent he looked. But that's not really the identity of this team. The identity of this team is, they're not going to allow teams to put up 20 points on average. Like, this is, if they're letting teams score, this team's not going to win. It's not really going to be a Bo Nix thing. It's going to be a defense thing. So it's just an interesting conversation. But ultimately, I think Bo Nix is probably still fine with it. The next best thing to having a Justin Jefferson on your team is to have a great defense that's going to hold your opponent to a touchdown.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, if I'm putting stock in anything, Bo Nix passing for 29 touchdowns, like, does he throw for more this year or does he throw for less this year? Does he, are they going to put the ball in his hand as much as they did? He was top 5-6 in the NFL in attempts. Do they continue to do that? Do they change the way they want to play the game because their defense is so good? I think a lot of what my buying stock in a Bo Nix regression is maybe not as much of him as it's probably more of like how teams are going to play them, how Sean Payton wants to play the game. The sophomore slump is real. Like, is he going to be able to recreate that? A lot of the discovery of who your team's going to be, sure, you can pull some things off, and now everybody knows, they know what he can and can't do. That first drive in Buffalo, amazing in the playoffs. And then after that was kind of like, ugh. And, we were very famously saying Buffalo needed to bolster their defense a little bit more because that was their weak spot. So I think there's a lot of things where I think I'm more hedging my bets that he's going to regress overall just as a player. And we saw it this year with CJ Stroud. He had a great rookie year and then was kind of like, kind of finding his way through it. I just don't think Bo Nix is a guy that's going to go win you a game. That's it. I know I'm going to be seen as a hater because I very obviously don't like the Broncos, but for me, I just don't think he's going to go win you a game. I don't think he is physically capable of doing that.
I don't know about this season. I do believe in Bo Nix as a talent. I think if anything, I mean, obviously they went and got Judkins as a running back, so they did a little bit there to try and help get some running back room. Or was it Judkins?
No, they got RJ.
Yeah,
whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Which Sean Payton was very excited about. But from a wide receiver standpoint, maybe you punt this year and you go back to the drawing board next year and you bolster the defense this year. Then you look to kind of surround him with some young wide receiver talent next year. I could very easily see that playing out. And, but I think that, kind of what Scotty said, I think this defense is scary. I think it's a good defense. And I agree with kind of what 100%. Scotty said, where if you're going to put chips into something, let's make something great versus try and just upgrade in one area. Let's try and really make an identity on our defense, and then we'll work on the offense as things come.
That's 100% what it's going to be. Like, Bo Nix is not going to have to make all the plays. Like, he's just going to have to make some of the plays. He's going to have to go do some of it because that defense is going to give him ample opportunity, ample short field. They're going to turn the ball over. He's going to get the ball in the 20. Can they turn those into touchdowns? I don't think they're going to be heavily reliant on Bo Nix going 80 yards to win games. It's going to be, we're going to create short fields for Bo Nix.
Yeah. The Raiders. Let's stay in the division, gentlemen. Pete Carroll is in win now mode by default because he is entering geriatric age here. He signed a 3-year deal with the Raiders, and admittedly, Carroll and this Raiders organization have really changed quite a few pieces here to make this a little bit more interesting for the Raiders. Obviously, the key piece here is Geno. Then they drafted Ashton Genty as well, which is huge. They've got Bowers, they got Max Crosby. So all to say, is this enough for the Raiders fans to feel good about this quote all-in situation here?
I think they'll be spicy. I think that's good enough for me to have some fun with it. And there's some fun weapons. I just wonder if this is going to turn into like the Falcons when they got Bijan, where they're like, all right, they can do all this. They're going to do all this. And you're like, they're not quite ready yet to go do all this.
I'm not as concerned with them because I'm not bought in on Raheem Morris as a head coach. And I think that he's somebody who could quickly, that seat could get quite warm this year if things don't pan out in a favorable direction. We know who Pete Carroll is. We've seen him in his tenure with the Seahawks, and he's showcased what he's able to do. And he went and got his guy, right? He went and got Geno, that was his guy. That was the guy that he believed in, and they obviously have a wonderful connection there. So I expect the Raiders to be a heck of a lot better this season than they were last season, and I don't really know if that's saying much, all things considered, but I do expect the Raiders to be in a more favorable spot to maybe win some games. Now, all in and win now, those are two words I would probably not use when I'm discussing the Raiders, but I think they're certainly on a path where they you said spicy. I think that's a really good way to phrase what the Raiders potentially could be is a spicy team this year.
Yeah, I this is almost like a two things have to be true at once kind of situation, because there's no doubt that the Raiders have gotten so much better. Just the addition of Geno is going to make a huge difference for that offense. And then, of course, if Genty is any fraction of what people expect him to be, that's also going to make a big impact. But I still am just a little bit confused about the Pete Carroll hire in general, because this is not a team that is anywhere close to win now. And they're, drafting Genty is not going to automatically turn them into a Super Bowl contender. So getting this coach who's at the very tail end of his career and saying, here you go, like, good luck. Like, they're just hoping that Pete Carroll gets them on track and then leaves and the next guy can take them over the hump is kind of what they have to expect. So I don't know. I think the Raiders fans should be happy about how this offseason played out, and I think they should look forward to a little bit more success.
Yeah.
But I also am still just kind of fuzzy on how the future looks, just given Pete Carroll's age and given Geno Smith's career arc, and I don't really know how they're going to parlay this into sustainable success over the long term.
Yeah, their slider is much the same like how I said with the Panthers. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're pretty good and maybe sneak in or flirting with wild card at some point, just because they have pieces that have been there. They have some young talent that can maybe get them over the top. But then I also wouldn't be surprised if they struggle and maybe, win 5 or 6 games. And I think if you're a Raiders fan, it's like, at this point, I just want to play spoiler to some teams. Let's get the Chiefs. Let's knock out the Broncos. Let's sneak some wins in here that maybe we weren't expecting to have. And then having a fun offense. There's nothing better than if your team is bad, but your offense is fun, because at least you're like, all right, cool. We're probably going to score some points.
Let's rate this division, gentlemen. Obviously, we're all going to have the Chiefs at the top, so we don't need to. That's not sharing any secrets.
We can spend some time talking about that.
No, let's not. Let's talk about the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos. Where do you have them ranked as 2, 3, and 4?
Do you want me to go first?
This is really early preseason, right? So obviously things can change.
I got it.
This is way too early predictions. But go ahead, Alan. You got it ready.
Yep. Broncos, Chargers, Raiders.
Okay.
In that order, following the Chiefs. If we have the Chiefs at 1, I had the Broncos last year, same, and it played out much like that. And that defense is going to get better. And then, like, Herbert, that team, that's rough having those two teams above you, and you got to worry about whatever the Chiefs are going to do, and then you got a stellar defense in the Broncos, and then I think that all hurts the Raiders. I think having to play all these teams that are capable of beating you pretty handily if they want, that's tough.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, I think we both are pretty solid with the Raiders in 4th. The question is the Chargers or the Broncos, and I think that what we expect the Broncos defense to be is the difference maker. Because you look at the Chargers, and I don't see a single part of that team that is elite. It may be Jim Harbaugh, you could say, is elite. But
that guy he gives an aura of eliteness.
There's not really a group that you're like, okay, this is an elite team that we can count on to perform every single week. I think we can say that. Obviously it's early and anything can happen, but I think we can say that about the Broncos defense. So I think that's the difference maker. So I think I agree. It's Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, Raiders.
Okay. Let's go over to the Vikings. And really the question at hand here is, what is J.J. McCarthy capable of? I don't love that question. And so I'm going to jump in here first, because I don't think it's necessarily what is J.J. McCarthy capable of. In my opinion, it's what is Kevin O'Connell capable of. And that's really where my mind goes, because we haven't seen anything with J.J. How can we sit here and say what is he capable of when he hasn't taken a singular NFL snap in a regular season game, right? So in my mind, it's what is Kevin O'Connell capable of? In every single time that anybody wants to doubt Kevin O'Connell, he showcases that, you know what, he is a incredible head coach. And so, the topic at hand is J.J. McCarthy, but really I think it's in tandem with Kevin O'Connell, and I do believe in Kevin O'Connell to get the job done. And obviously he trusts J.J. McCarthy. They didn't re-sign Sam Darnold. They didn't really get a quarterback competition going into the offseason, and he seems pretty solidified that J.J. McCarthy is going to be the guy moving forward. that compounded with we've seen him play with these random quarterbacks over the years and still found success.
Yep.
The Pastronaut is a great example. Sam Darnold is a glaring example of someone who found success in a short window with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. And so even if J.J. McCarthy's not a world beater, they don't need a world beater. Look at Kirk Cousins. Look at how his career arc has gone down, where he was finding a lot of success with the Vikings, and then he went to the Falcons, and now he's sitting on the bench. Right? And so I think the question is Kevin O'Connell capable of unlocking the most potential out of J.J. McCarthy? I like that question a lot better. My answer is yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's kind of solidified himself as this quarterback savant, you would say. Like he can just, his system, or he molds the system to accentuate the strengths of whatever quarterback. I mean, if he is that level, I think he is. I think he's, which shockingly is an underrated coach, honestly, because if you're like, hey, who's the top head coaches in the NFL, you'd have a short list of like the standard names, but I think he would get lost in there. And I think you're absolutely right. I think everything you said is perfect and spot on, because it's, if he's had over a year now to understand, study, work with JJ, know what he likes, doesn't like developing that rapport and putting him in the position, they have a good team around him. That's got a lot of talent at many different levels. You have probably the best wide receiver in the NFL. Like that makes life a whole hell of a lot easier if you're a quarterback. And so I think everything you said is spot on. I think you're right. And I think we'll see, but I'm very confident in what JJ would be able to deliver with the tutelage that he'll be receiving.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it all comes down to JJ. Is he capable? Because like Slapdog said, we haven't seen him take a snap in the regular season, so maybe he's ass, and there's nothing Kevin O'Connell can do about that.
It could be ass.
But seeing the success that Sam Darnold had, that's got to inspire confidence. I had a lot of confidence in JJ in this landing spot before any of the injury happened, and we thought JJ was going to be the guy last year. I had confidence because largely of Kevin O'Connell, and then of course Justin Jefferson. And seeing the success that Sam Darnold had, that just gives me more and more confidence. So I'm more excited.
I didn't think though, like, what if he's just ass?
Yeah, he could just be ass.
He could just be ass.
He could be.
Possibility.
But I maybe I'm putting too many chips in Kevin O'Connell's basket here. But I think that if he was ass, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation of there's no quarterback competition, right? And that's the kind of glaring thing to me is you had options. You could have kept Sam Darnold if you thought JJ was going to be ass. You could have kept Daniel Jones if you thought he was going to be ass. And
I guess that's true, because I think Sam Darnold's ass. So maybe
so do
it
I.
doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter.
And that's where, I'm like, okay, I believe in Kevin O'Connell. So if he's going to roll out JJ week 1 and say he's the guy and he's going to get it done, I'm believing in Kevin O'Connell to dictate that and make sure that he's putting, his best foot forward for that team to succeed. All right, let's pivot over to a fun one, gentlemen. The Jets, the New York Jets. Can Aaron Glenn stabilize the culture that is the Jets?
What culture?
Well, that was going to be my next question.
What fucking culture? What culture is he stabilizing?
Can he? Let me rephrase this. Can Aaron Glenn create any sort of stability of culture for the New York Jets?
They're in desperate need of an identity. I think he needs some. Just give him an identity. Do something. What is your thing? When Rex Ryan was there, obviously it was the defense, right? Like you knew what you were getting, and I think that's what we need. Just what is it? What do you have? What's your identity right now? And it can change. It doesn't have to be that way forever. But just like this year, what is your identity? Like, what do you want to do? I think they got capable running backs. I think they have a good enough defense. I think there's a lot of things there that they can hang their hat on. It's like, do they want to do that, or do they want to try to be something they're not? And that's going to be the decisions he's going to have to make. Am I going to do something I'm not, or am I just going to admit what we are and then just give us an identity there? And then that could hopefully establish some sort of culture there in the wake of, it's almost like a post-apocalyptic scene when Aaron Rodgers is somewhere and then leaves. You're just like, what is this? What are we doing? And so if he can figure something out, then sure. But I don't know. I feel like it's been years since they've had any kind of like true identity.
Yeah. I don't know either. I've said before that Justin Fields makes me kind of excited. I think Justin Fields has an opportunity with probably the best roster that he's played on in his NFL career to make more of an impact than he has in the past. But how far is that going to carry this team? I don't really know. I don't know if a good impact for Justin Fields is like a 500 season where he throws 30 touchdowns and runs for a couple, or if it's going to be they're going to make the playoffs or whatever. I think it's similar to the Falcons situation where you look at the roster, and this has been the case for a couple of years, where you look at the roster and you're like, yeah, this team should be really good. But whether it's Aaron Rodgers or whether it's Robert Salah or whether it's whatever situation they found themselves in, there was always just this turmoil around the organization. So stability is a good word. They need stability, but in order to get stability, you have to build a foundation, and we don't really know what that foundation is going to be yet. So a first-time head coach, he's got a tall task. And I will just say that given the Jets' recent history, I don't have a ton of confidence overall in Aaron Glenn or this organization finding sustained success for a long time.
So you lean towards no, Scotty, is that correct?
I would lean towards no just because that's what all the evidence thus far that's been presented to us suggests. I mean, unless Justin Fields comes out and really turns his career around and Aaron Glenn turns out to be a great head coach, there's just a lot of things that have to emerge from the unknown for this to work. And we just can't really predict that that's going to happen with all these changes.
So, Alan, do you lean towards yes or no on this question?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
I also lean kind of towards no. I don't, I've said this before. I will say it again. I don't think Robert Salah was the problem there. I think in large he was probably the best fit to try and steer that ship in a favorable direction. And I think Aaron Rodgers lit that ship on fire and kicked him out the door. And that's unfortunate because I do like Robert Salah and I do think he was a good head coach. And I think that he had the respect of his players, and one bad egg kind of ruined that entire situation, in my opinion. So I lean towards no, and that's Aaron Glenn. He was a great defensive coordinator with the Lions. I hope he can, but if I'm a betting man, and I am, I would say probably not. So, last question here: the Colts. What exactly is the ceiling given the quarterback room? I mean, obviously you've got Daniel Jones, you've got Russell Wilson, and then you have Anthony Richardson. Okay, I'm sorry, that's the Giants. What am I doing here? I'm losing my mind.
No, you're right.
No,
you're right.
I'm not right.
Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones?
Yeah, Russell Wilson is not with them.
Oh, Russell Wilson, no. You were just saying names.
Yeah, I was just
you were just saying
quarterbacks.
You're just saying people you know. That's smart.
Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson. I mean, this quarterback room is the Colts have come out and said, hey, it's going to be a quarterback battle to start the season.
Yeah. If you could, it's like what I think they'd want to do is if you could mold Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson into one person, if you could just smash them together and be like, all right, somebody that's kind of been around the block, knows how to be a professional, we've seen win some games, and then you basically get I'm going to kick everybody's ass mentality and talent of Richardson. I think they would want to do that, but
I have a solution.
I think Daniel Jones is going to be the starter, honestly.
Do you think he'll be the starter by the end of the season?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I have a solution here. Trade Jonathan Taylor. Get some draft capital. And put both Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson back there as dual quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah.
They both are mobile. I mean, Daniel Jones not as much as Richardson probably, but they both can throw a ball. Put them both back there. Put them both back there at the same time, run a dual quarterback system. I'm not a smart man, but I think this is a genius move. And then that way you're keeping your options open all the time, whether you want to run it or you're going to throw it. You're constantly confusing the defenses. You got two mediocre quarterbacks back there that could maybe get the job done. Just throwing ideas out.
Jonathan Taylor pains me because the Chiefs could have drafted him, and they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire for.
You mean the backup running back for?
God fucking damn it!
For the Cowboys.
Fucking damn it! It's the last time they ever listened to Patrick Mahomes about who to draft. Son of a bitch.
On a real note, I mean, the Colts have basically already come out and said, it's going to be a battle. We expect both of these guys to make starts throughout the season. And for me, the big question is Anthony Richardson. They invested in him in the draft. He not only has looked confused on the field and not only has decided to just take plays off because he needed some rest, but he just can't stay healthy. And given his body style, given his play style, He has to stay healthy. That's the only reason Anthony Richardson is valuable. Like, he's valuable because he can throw the ball a million miles and he can truck people on the line of scrimmage. Like, that's why he's valuable. If he can't stay healthy, like, there's just no point in rostering Anthony Richardson. So to me, what we're going to see this season is we're going to see a sprinkle a little bit of both. Both of them are going to make some good plays. Both of them are going to look like doofuses. But the real test is whether or not Anthony Richardson gets some sort of long-term injury. And if that's the case, I think he's done. I think Daniel Jones is a bridge quarterback. They move on, and they're looking toward the future.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, that's all the questions that I have this week. So it's time to get out of here. And before we do that, I want to give a huge shout out to the Fantasy Brains. Go check them out Thursdays. They're coming out with content consistently and constantly, and it's good content. It's not half-assed content. It is great fantasy content. Fantasy football is a year-round thing. For all of you degenerates who play Dynasty, even if you're trying to get ahead in redraft formats, go check out the Fantasy Brains because they are doing an amazing job over there. And once again, Thursdays on your favorite podcast platform. And give us a follow on all your social medias. We genuinely do appreciate it. We are a small little podcast that is growing, and we love the Brainiac community, and we're trying to grow it. So that's it. That's all the time we have. Let's get the heck out of here. I love you, boys. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out LeatherBrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.